Welcome to On the Beat, where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every week, exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network.
Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome everybody into On the Beat, exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network, a show where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every single week. We have a lot of fun with that. Really looking forward to the rest of the season now that it's finally here. This is week one. It's upon us. My name is Joe Miller. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Miller Wired. Flying solo, other than our guest tonight for this episode. John and Jerry won't be with us, but it is so good to have every single one of you joining us. Please do us a favor. Please like, please subscribe. If you are watching this live right now on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, please like, please subscribe. If you're listening to it in post as a podcast on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, somewhere around there, or even next week, who knows? Also, please like and please subscribe. Please do us that favor. Help us get our numbers up. But joining us right now, Buffalo Bills beat reporter for ESPN, Alaina Getzenberg. Alaina, I'm excited to have you on again, and hopefully you're excited to be here again.
Yeah, so excited to be here. I'm so excited to talk about like a football game in a couple days. So that is exciting. So yeah, ready. Fall's here, I guess. I don't know, but ready to talk about it all. So yes, happy to be here.
So there's all kinds of topics to talk about. There's obviously it's week one. There's injuries. There's, depth stuff. Joe Andreessen is still a relatively great conversation to have, but we would be remiss if we didn't have the conversation around the GQ article that came out. What was it? It was Clay Skipper from GQ dropped an article today with Stefon Diggs. It got a lot of flash on Twitter and social media today. I feel like it's probably something we need to talk about. First of all, you read it, first impressions, and then I'll hit just a couple quick points and just kind of get some of your thoughts on those points. But what was your initial reaction to what you read?
There's nothing in there that I was surprised by or like caught much off guard by. I think if Stefon Diggs is anything, is he's pretty he's someone who, what's the best way to say this? I think he's someone who feels a certain way about things and like tends to stick to that. Like, I think he's his own person. And that's honestly, like, to be honest, one of the things that I respect a lot about Steph is that he is himself. And he's not like, he's not like ashamed of that. He's very, he's got his own personality. And I think that's great. I think, there was obviously, we knew like that last season, obviously, I don't think there's anything wrong. Personally, we can have this conversation. I think you want a receiver that wants the ball. I actually agree with him on that. There's nothing wrong at all about a receiver wanting the ball in his hands. You want that in your receiving targets of any position, really. But yeah, I mean, it's no secret that like the end of last season wasn't something he was happy about. That wasn't a happy time for him in that building. He wants to be involved in the offense, and statistically he was not to the level that he would like, that the Bills would have liked, just what didn't reflect that. So I don't think anything caught me off guard. I understand though why some of those comments are definitely maybe not Bills fans' favorites, or, definitely catch some attention because they are, some of it is like, obviously he didn't have a great end to his time, like on the field in Buffalo. So it's a little harder to be like, I do think he is a great receiver. I think he's going to go down as one of the best wide receivers in Bills history, in my opinion. But I do get like, no, it was not a good end. And like, so some of the comments he's saying are a little harder to swallow, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts were.
So on it. It feels a little like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It wasn't a matter of, things were going great, swimmingly. He signs a $96 million extension. I can't wait to retire a Buffalo Bill. Then all of a sudden I'm just in my feels. And that's effectively kind of what he says here. And I think what stuck out to me and what troubled me and I don't want to give the entire article away because I feel like if people want to, people need to, especially Bills fans, Bills Mafia needs to read the article. You guys, if you need to, it's all over Twitter. I'm sure it's all over Facebook. GQ Sports, Clay Skipper is the author, or I should say the journalist that wrote it, or at least did the interview. But like at the beginning, once again, people were wondering out loud on sports talk and television, which I'm one of those dudes, right? I mean, my voice it's not as big as your voice. It's not as big as WGR 55, but or even NFL Network, but like the things that we say do get heard. And he says, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to fight the world? He says, you're not beating Twitter and you're not beating the internet. He put that stuff into the ether. The stuff that was being talked about was the stuff that he was tweeting. Like, he did it to himself. It wasn't a matter of like all of a sudden people like, hey, I think Stephon Diggs is a diva. Like, do you think Stephon? Do you think there wasn't a matter of like people, you and me having a conversation and coming out of nowhere, just talking about, well, and you bringing it up to me. I feel like Stephon Diggs is a diva in the locker. He did it to himself. Right.
Yeah. The Twitter things are fair. That's a fair. Because I remember asking him about like something about the tweets or something, and he's like, "Oh, you make too much of it," and it's like,
right.
Well, you're the one posting it, so what do you want me to do with that? So
right.
Yes, I agree. The social, I agree with you on that. That like he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing with the social media stuff. Like if you think he doesn't know what he's doing, he does. I promise you he knows what he's doing. So yes. Like I agree with you on that point that yes, the social media stuff, he makes it more of a vicious cycle. Even when it was like years ago when he's tweeting stuff, it's like, know what you're doing. So yes, I agree that part is a little tough.
We won't spend a ton of time here, but real quick, just two other things. The other, Diggs started off the season hot in Buffalo, which he did. It was crazy what his targets were and his receiving yards, and then it fell off. And he goes on to say, was it did I forget how to play effing football? Like was this my fault? His target share didn't go down. His target share was exactly the same. There's an element of, you kind of did forget how to play football. Like it wasn't, I don't think it was a matter of like, he was broken or like the game passed him by or he fell off a cliff. I think it was a desire thing. I think there was just I don't know that his head and his heart were necessarily here, which kind of goes back to that other stuff. And I think the other one too was just for me, just the part about Josh Allen, and he's like, could I respond to it? Yes. Am I gonna? No. And Josh Allen has responded in kind for the most part up until do I miss him? I wouldn't say that I miss him. Other than that, Josh Allen has been like, he's a brother to me. He's one of my best friends. I'm so thankful for Steph. And Steph is like, people say bad things. They make me out to be the devil. Should I respond? Or can I respond? Sure. Should I? No. And it's just like, I just, as a friend, like if you and I were friends and people were coming out, like if you and I were tight buds, right? We're close. And people, whatever, in other media markets are coming out and saying that Joe Miller saying all kinds of stuff about Alaina Getzenberg. And I'm like, yep, they can say that if they want. I think you would be upset with me, right? Did you say that? I did not say that. Well, then say you didn't. I don't know. Just see.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I do think one thing that's interesting about Josh and Steph is like, I don't know. Josh has said like nice things about him. I agree overall. Yeah. I think the missing thing that's a tough question to answer, like in a way that satisfies what's happening now with the Bills and what happened in the past. I do think that Josh, goes out of his way maybe to say nicer things, like be effusive about like guys like Mitch Morse and
very nice. He's a nice guy.
Yeah. And like maybe the Steph stuff is like, what. Not like oh my gosh, we had sleepovers, like that kind of thing where it's like,
I'm sure there's animosity. Yeah. I'm sure there's animosity there, right? I mean,
but Steph's answer was not as like, it could have been, it could have been a little.
It's just if you get a chance, everybody go find the article, read the article. It's a good article. Like I said, I feel every member of Bills Mafia should read it. It's unfortunate that well-timed and well-placed to drop it during week 1 when Bills Mafia is all like every day I'm sending out Go Bills tweets, getting ready for the home opener, and then this thing shows up. But it is what it is. So
I also think like this Stephon Diggs conversation is going to like, this is just like a piece of it to me. I mean, and we've got week 5 against the Texans.
Oh yeah.
Where it's just going to intensify. And I think like we haven't finished hearing Steph's side of it either, like whether that's for the best or the worst. Like I think there's still pieces here to come out, but it's something where like I think everything's a little more striking when it ended how it did with the trade this offseason. So I think it is good to read the story and see what he has to say, and there's definitely a lot of sides to how Steph's situation went in Buffalo.
We were talking. They didn't know what was going to happen, but I did. It's like, oh. Anyways, talking with Alaina Getzenberg, Buffalo Bills beat reporter from ESPN. Let's move on to this week and things that actually we'll call it matter, right, to the Buffalo Bills and to potentially us and Bills Mafia. So the Buffalo Bills laundry list of injuries. Where are we? I know there haven't really been any updates, but if you've got any speculation or anything that you've heard, injuries, where are we at on injuries with this football team right now?
I think it's important to like start this conversation by saying it was an amazing note that like the last Wednesday, almost I had like a list of injured guys I was looking for at that practice. Almost every single one of them was participating to some extent in that practice. Mitch Trubisky was the one who like he was wearing the least amount of pads and like did like a little moving around and throwing, but not a ton. Like he's the one that I'm keeping my eye on the most, I think, because that knee, he was not putting a lot of weight on it. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they call up Mike White from the practice squad to back up Josh in this one. Yeah. We'll see. But I don't think there's based on what I saw at practice, like he had a good bit to go and he could have had like an amazing recovery week. But that's kind of definitely the injury that I'm like really keeping an eye on. DeMar, I feel really good about being in a spot. I think that he would have had to have something change. Like he was out there practicing. Like he's someone who like they were being careful with, after the Matt Milano injury. So I feel like safety is the most interesting to me because it's partly like, okay, let's say everyone's practicing and back out there. Like, then what? Like, what do you do?
On the official depth chart, DeMar Hamlin is the starting safety. Next to Taylor Rapp. So that was, I think, a surprise to everybody. But Mike Edwards didn't get as many kind of reps through the preseason either. So that to me was surprising. I don't know if you were surprised by that too.
Not really, not going into the practice week because we haven't seen, Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop have not had the team reps that DeMar Hamlin has had. Like for almost all of camp, DeMar was healthy and like he was out there with Taylor Rapp, with those cornerbacks, getting the reps in. So to me, like Cole Bishop, I think he was still in a non-contact jersey last week. So I think they want to, like, I would be really surprised if they rush him out there, especially because why would you? He's coming off a major, a significant injury that kept him out for many weeks. And he is a rookie. And like, that's like a lot to ask. Mike Edwards is an interesting one where he also has barely practiced, like with multiple injuries. So I think they're in a little bit of a tough spot where like DeMar's gotten the reps. Like you almost have to like see how it goes. But I think this week, like if you're keeping up with practice updates and stuff, I think this week will be very telling for safety. But wide receiver, I talked to Curtis Samuel last week and he was like, I was asked him how he was doing. And he was like, everyone's got a little bit of something right now. Like he seems like he felt pretty good about his situation. So despite like, if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd be like, they're a mess. Like they got so many injuries.
White flag.
all over the place. But like going into practice tomorrow, like I think it's a little more like because of how like they've had a week, to kind of get healthy and all that stuff. Like, I think they will still be dealing with injuries. There will be something on the injury report 100%. But like, I think it's not maybe as dramatic as it seemed at one point, but it's definitely like, don't get it twisted. They're not going into this game healthy. Like,
gotcha.
That's just the reality of it. So
I forget who you just said. It's Curtis Samuel. We've all got a little bit of something. That's usually what you hear from Josh Allen around week 8, like week 8, week 9. Like we're all dealing with
that's how injured this team is. Like you go down that 50, like when I was finalizing my 53-man projection, I was like, well, 20 of these guys have like had an injury like within the last like stretch. So like that's a little more than it was, but like, it was like that, like, well, this whole list is dealing with something. And that's kind of the reality of where they are at the moment.
Gotcha. And one of the benefactors of that might have been Joe Andreessen. And take me a little bit, if you can, talk to me a little bit about Joe Andreessen. going from a no-name rookie walk-on invitation to a kind of that shot heard around the world game with the Steelers to literally making the final 53. Was there any indication in practice, in just training camp and everything else, that this guy might have NFL level talent, or was it literally the Steelers game? The Steelers game just put him out there and he's a gamer. We got to keep this guy in the squad.
It was, he was doing fine in camp. It wasn't like, there was not he's a sleeper to watch for the 53 or something like that. I was like,
Right.
maybe practice squad or like something like that. But it really was like, I think if Matt Milano, and this is horrible, nobody wants injuries.
Yep.
I think if Matt, and this first, of course, coming off his injury last year, it's horrible. But if Matt Milano does not tear his biceps, Joe Andreessen's not on this roster.
Probably he's on the practice squad for sure, right?
Yeah,
at that point,
for multiple levels. Like they wouldn't have sat Terrell Bernard in that Steelers game, and Joe Andreessen wouldn't have started, and they wouldn't have seen what he was like with that first team defense. Like it really was that catapulted him. And like, yes, he showed other things, but without that, like he's having a really, first of all, numbers wise, he doesn't really fit in, but also like he played so well in that game, and that really helped elevate him. And it was especially seeing him with the first team defense that like I think is important. Like he performed well tackling Russell Wilson. Like that's it's with like, the defensive line that we're going to see on Sunday in front of him. So I think that's important. And yeah, he earned it. How long, these roster spots are going to keep moving around. So it's like with new injuries, I'm sure, unfortunately, and all that, but it really was. Or no, they'll stay healthy the entire year. It's going to be a 100% healthy roster. Yeah, but it really was like he performed really well in that game. And then he was not getting like big time training camp, like, major snaps with the second team defense, first team, he wasn't lower on the depth chart, but it was that opportunity that like really catapulted him.
Very good. Have we heard yet who's going to be calling the defense, McDermott or Babich? Or do we expect to find out tomorrow if we have not?
So last week, Sean McDermott told the Buffalo News that it's going to be Bobby Babich, which was is the way that it was trending. He just didn't want to say it yet. So so the expectation is that it will be Bobby Babich, which will be really interesting. It's another component to this year that, someone new will be calling the defensive plays, and what that does for Sean McDermott in terms of like a game management perspective, like is going to be interesting as well. We'll be asking more about that tomorrow at the press conference. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like these young coordinators, Bobby isn't as young as Joe, but like they're two young, fiery, like really energetic guys that are now going to be calling the plays for this team is something that's like a huge component to this season and so different from last year when you have two new play callers week one. Like I think that's an underrated storyline for this team.
Yeah, super exciting. So the Buffalo Bills this week, as we know, home opener, they're hosting the Arizona Cardinals. And we know the abilities and the talents that Kyler Murray brings with him and just the trouble that he can be, especially if he gets loose on the outside. What do the Bills need to do in your mind to slow him down and kind of keep him from stressing that defense? Because I think we would all agree that the offense is going to be the offense. While we don't necessarily know what we've got in those receivers, Josh Allen is on this football team and they can run the ball, and Dalton Kincaid is on this football team. The offensive line is going to be pretty good, but the defense, a little concerning. So what are your thoughts as far as what the Bills are going to plan to do, possibly to, keep themselves from being victimized by Kyler?
I feel like it's watching for Kyler. Like to me, the most dangerous weapon on this team, like, is Kyler Murray. Like, I think we also are underrating, like, or I am. Like when I was thinking about this matchup, I was like, what do they have to watch for? It's like Kyler Murray as like a runner too, like like he's a dangerous, and like how he can move around in the pocket. Like I think he's very dangerous. Of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. offers, who knows? Like it's going to be an interesting thing to see how he fits into this offense. And then James Conner's a good bag. They've got like good components, and I think it is going to be a more challenging test. Like I don't know about the Cardinals defense, but the Cardinals offense, like to me, it presents like a bit of a challenge because you have to. Kyler's healthy now. He's been healthy. You have to protect for what he can do, how he can move around. And so I think like this will be a really interesting test for the likes of Dorian Williams, playing in this game, and this defensive line too, how they're going to, it's the same, that's like the position, that's the biggest returners are on that defensive line with, of course, some new additions, but like how those guys will perform. Like, I can't wait to see how Greg Rousseau plays.
Yes.
Like, how's that going to go? Like, I think there's interesting components. And then to me, because of what Kyler brings, how these safeties play, which is the biggest positional question mark on this roster, wide receivers close. How these safeties play with an offense that like offers different things will be interesting. But to me, it's like it's all about limiting what Kyler Murray can do, like in the pocket and that kind of thing, and then worrying about everything else like afterwards.
Yeah, it's going to be very important to contain, right? Keeping him inside the tackles. Not that he can't hurt you up the middle, because clearly he can. I believe the play that he got injured on, whatever it was, a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now. I don't even know. It's been a while. I think he was running. He darted up the middle, cut to his right, and when he slid, is somewhere in that maneuver is where he ended up getting hurt. But you mentioned James Conner, you mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr., and Trey McBride is another one of those guys that a lot of fantasy folks, and I play fantasy. I don't know if you play fantasy or not.
I do.
Yeah, very good. I figured you did. I didn't want to assume though. But there's just a lot of speculation that he's going to have a really good year. And I know you haven't been around the Bills as long as I have, but traditionally the Bills have had a problem covering tight ends, and Trey McBride is the dude that's going to scare me a little bit, specifically as you mentioned, linebackers, Dorian Williams. Terrell Bernard, not too concerned about Dorian Williams, and then the safety group. Set my mind at ease, Alaina, about Trey McBride and Kyler Murray, if you can, please.
No, I mean,
that is not the answer I'm looking for. Is not the answer.
Actually, like, while we have concerns, right? Like Dorian Williams and the safeties are what I'm keeping, like the biggest things I'm like, how will they perform? I think it's important to remember like what is coming back on this defense. Like Terrell Bernard's coming off a fantastic season. He's now had an off season knowing he's the starter. Of course, he doesn't have Matt Milano alongside him, but he's still out there playing football. And then I think this defensive line is really like, they crushed Camp. Like if there's Camp was like when this defensive line, like I was like, okay, they'll be good up front. Like they were really good. So I think there are a lot of returners. Like this is the group that changed the least because they brought back Daquan Jones and he's, healthy again. And Ed Oliver's coming, like all these guys are coming back that I think should build a lot of confidence. And then Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, I think both also had great camps. Christian Benford is really good. Like he especially towards the end of camp, he was doing things I was like, okay, they're good at corner because like he's playing really well. So I think there's definitely, look to the returners to me. Like who are the guys that are coming back who were there last year who performed well? Like they're back, they're mostly healthy, and then hope that like that can make up. They should, it's the first game, so there's many unknowns, but like that potentially should make up for some of the deficits. They know they're like not the strongest at safety. So you build the defense differently and call it differently because of that. And they know that. It's not a secret.
Super, super good stuff. Talk with Alaina Getzenberg from ESPN, Buffalo Bills beat reporter. A couple more questions for you, then we'll get you out of here. I appreciate you so much joining us. We love having you on the show. After what you saw from this team kind of up to now, what are your expectations for the Buffalo Bills kind of going into the season? And I guess what I'm looking for is you've been here for several camps. You've been here for several preseasons. This was a very bizarre preseason where Josh Allen threw 3 passes, right? The wide receiver, the question started to become for us as content creators, how do you even evaluate these wide receivers when your quarterback, you're afraid to put them on the field because you don't want them to get hurt because of everything that's going on the injury report. But what are your expectations as far as from what you've seen in the past versus what you've seen this year? Obviously, understanding that the Jets are coming on strong with Aaron Rodgers being healthy. Obviously, the Dolphins are continuing to build. So, thoughts?
I think there's so many unknowns, which is like, as a beat reporter and someone who's been at so many practices, all the practices, like it's like weird to say that still.
Yeah.
They don't want to show all of their cards until it's really go time. And I think it's been interesting to kind of try to piece together what this team is because it's so different than any other Bills camp I've covered. Like the difference, it's like a 180 almost because you went from having these concrete things. You went from having Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, these defensive pieces, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde that were secure to like now I'm watching to see if the snaps from Connor McGovern are like good. And he got much better. That got much better as camp went on. So I feel better about that. But like
that was a moment.
Yes, there was a moment when it was a lot on the ground. So but that has definitely improved. What you would expect. That takes time. But yeah, I think there's so much that like they don't know about like how this group is going to come together because it's new, it's different. There's one wide receiver on this roster who's caught a regular season pass from Josh Allen. That's wild. But crazy. Obviously do expect big things from Dalton Kincaid this year. Like I think he's almost, you could count him as a receiver at this point, like on the roster for what they want him to do. And I think that's going to be a huge component. I do think, don't be surprised if it takes a little bit. Like we've seen this team, the Bills like to get hot towards the end of the season. That's when they go on these runs, these streaks. Like, and yes, they do have a tough start to the year, but like, don't be surprised if it like takes a sec for this offense to figure out what they want to really get going on the field because they're learning each other. So to me, there is that element of like, it might be rough sometimes. Like it might be, you know, Keon's going to drop some passes. He's a rookie.
No, he's not.
He's going to. But there's like also like a lot. Like I think Khalil Shakir is primed for a huge year.
Yes.
Like he's looked great. Like he and Josh really, you can tell that connection's there.
Is he getting drafted? I've had 2 fantasy drafts so far. I've got one more. Khalil has not gotten drafted in either of them, to my surprise. Keon and Curtis Samuel both got drafted. Keon did not. Or I'm sorry, Khalil did not.
I would draft Khalil before Curtis Samuel. I would personally, but
yeah, he went.
Keon too.
Curtis Samuel went in a half PPR league, so there was more about the rushing yards, the potential, because there's people talking about him getting like 60 carries through the season, and it's like
that's
I don't know. That's a lot. Like
he will get 50, some for sure. He will be part of that rushing attack, but I think this team is still like. This is a good football team, and I can say that because Josh Allen's on it. And then, like, everything else, like, I think they have a lot of good pieces. And it's kind of, for me, like, the question with this team is how will it all come together? And I think that's exciting to get to see how it does come together. And there's still, though, like, to say that, like, yes, there were departures this offseason. All of them were for a reason, whether it was financials, whether it was health, whether it was performance at a certain age. To me, that, like, there's reasons and they got younger at positions they needed to. So there's also like, they could be better in some ways. And I think that's something to look forward to, but also like be okay. Like it's hard to, but try to be okay with maybe some growing pains along the way.
Awesome. One more question for you before I ask that last question. Please do me a favor. Let everybody know where they can find you, find your work, find you on social media, all that good stuff, because you do a very good job. So.
Thank you. So yes, I'm at A Getzenberg on Twitter, which I won't call X.
I don't either.
And all of my stories are on ESPN.com, ESPN.com/NFL. You can find all of our content. Lots of stories coming out about. We're going to be covering all of it as the season gets going. And then every now and then you'll see me on TV. So but lots of it's going to be a fun season. Like I think there's going to be a lot of cool stories and a lot of players coming into the limelight a little bit more.
Yeah, super excited. Now, this last question that I have for you. You've been with the Buffalo Bills how many years now? Is this your third? This will be
my fourth season.
So
third year. Yep.
So I lived in Columbus, Ohio. So I've been around the college atmosphere. I've been around the Ohio State Buckeyes. My wife graduated from OSU. So I get that college town feel that everybody talks about, that if you've never not been in Buffalo, a lot of people don't understand it. There's an expectation that this is how everybody is about their football team. And the reality is in Indianapolis, they're not like the Mafia is. I don't know, however you would say that. But you've been here for you're going on your fourth season. And there's just something for me it's just I want to use the word magical about the home opener. It like they let the kids out of school early, right? If it's on a Monday or a Thursday or like a primetime game, this is on a Sunday, the home opener, 1:00, which is great. But like that whole area is just going to shut down. So that's a long lead into the question. I apologize. With all that being said, it's a special day. It's almost a holiday here in Western New York, the home opener. What is your favorite part? Do you have a favorite part about this? Is there something about this weekend in Buffalo? Because I know you like it here and you like being around this team. Is there something specific that it's like, all right, this is what I'm looking for, or this is what I look forward to the most?
There's a couple ways I could answer this, but I get to the stadium early to avoid traffic
Smart.
because we all know it can get really bad around there. But
Yep,
one of
yep.
my favorite things is like, and this has kind of been like as the preseason's been going, like bits of it, but I love my drive to the stadium because you just see like, even this week, there's going to be so many things popping up that are like
Yep.
signs and like different, everything blue and red and like buffaloes everywhere, like Josh Allen's face everywhere. And so I
Yep.
think I just like that feeling of like, every time I drive up to the stadium, and especially the first game when it feels like real and like the leaves are starting to change and it feels like fall. You feel that
Yep.
crisp in the air.
Yep,
And there's like
yep.
all of this Bills stuff out that wasn't there like a week ago. Like I just think it's the coolest feeling like driving up to the stadium because it's like nowhere else. I remember like
Right.
I used to cover the Panthers. You drove up to that stadium, you wouldn't even know. Sorry, Panthers fans. You wouldn't even know there was a game that day.
Yep.
But like this is like I love like it's a whole drive-in. Like it's a whole
Right.
experience. That's one of my favorite things. But also just like this is the start of the week where like you can go nowhere without like something being Billsy. Like
That's right.
every place you go, there's something that like you know the Bills are playing on Sunday, and that's such a Buffalo thing, and I love it so much.
Yeah, you just said that the autumn wind is crisp. I was like, the autumn wind is a pirate. Like I went to the NFL Films
Yes.
thing. But Alaina, thank you so much for joining us, being a part. I can't wait to have you on again, which we will do here in a couple weeks or a month or so. As kind of we just run the rotation. I don't want to burden anybody, so I want all of you guys to come on when it's easy and relaxing versus like, hey, Alaina, I need you like every other week. So we're not going to do that
I
to
love
you.
doing it.
But we love having
doing
you on.
Love chatting. So
Awesome.
There's so much to talk about. We could talk for days about the
Yes,
Bills, so.
yes, we could. Absolutely, that's true. But thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, ladies and gentlemen. You've been listening to On the Beat on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe. My name is Joe Miller. For me, for John, for Jerry, for Alaina, we appreciate you guys watching us. Yeah, go Bills.
Welcome to On the Beat,